evening, everybody. It is Wednesday, 13th of September. Sun is just going down, so I will be very brief. I have already prepared this video, part 26 in our series, so you should get that later this evening if I pull my finger out. I just wanted to have a few words by way of introduction, and also at the end of this video, a couple of words about our latest sailing plans. This video covers all the work we've done in the last 4 weeks, right up until today, but predominantly it is about getting the captain's launch onto the deck of Josefine. Lily's a boat that you will probably or may well have seen in previous episodes. She is a gaff rig sloop. She rows beautifully, and that's Randy's passion. She sails like she really wants to, and that's my passion. And to get a boat that did both of those things well, we had to go much bigger than your average 8 or 9 foot, which is the length of most tenders for practical reasons. We bought her from a ship's broker, boat broker in Falmouth called Wooden Ships, lovely company. And we absolutely love her to death. As I say, we bought her 6 years ago, and we've had such a lot of fun in her. It would really crush us if we couldn't get her onto the decks of Josefine. And as the opportunity to try that out has got closer and closer, you can imagine the stress levels have gone up a little bit. So that's what we've really been doing for the last 4 weeks, and that's what this video is about. So I hope you enjoy it, and I'll catch you again in a minute. Morning, everybody. It's I think it's Tuesday, 1st of August. There's Randy doing a little bit of deck repair work. My job this morning, and I've just started it actually, is to bring up the chain. We put that down yesterday, Randy and I got it out of its storage and put it in for the first time. That's brand new chain. I was curious to see whether it would actually fit in the locker which I made, which it does just about. It's a hell of a weight though. We weighed it and it's 480 kilos. There's the locker, and you can see the panelling that I made, the actual box that I made for it. So I sort of like it the way it is now, really. The box isn't over full, and the weight is lower down. And that little gap down there is pretty much unusable for anything else. So it's perfect really to store the first 20 meters of our chain. I'm about to do this. I've also got some plugs coming so that I can plug that, so that that windlass can go on there tomorrow, because Mark will be in tomorrow and he'll finish the wiring on that. And the other job I've been doing this morning, I've taken off the wooden cleats that were on here, plugged the holes and just put a spot of varnish on there. And you can see the spider band is loosely in position here, just being held up by a couple of bits of rope. And as soon as that's gone a little bit tagged, well, it already has actually. As soon as I finish that job, I've got some felt which I cut out this morning, some strips of felt, look, like that, which I'll put between the band and the mast. And then that spider band will be fitted around about this height here, which is where the original cleats were. It's a good working height. So as soon as I've done the chain, I'll do this job, lift that up, bolt that into place. So you see we're cracking on. It's quite a pile of chain, isn't it? It's all down? Yeah. Good. Thank you. Well done. There we go, that's much better, isn't it? Plenty of space in there, look. So quite happy about that. It got quite a considerable amount of weight, probably 150 kilos we've managed to get down, actually below the level of the locker itself. So very pleased with that. So that's another little job done. There we go.
Good morning, everybody. It's Sunday, 6th of August. Please excuse my appearance. It's 7:30 in the morning. But what I wanted to show you this morning was what I'm working on at the moment. I started this job yesterday, and it is this spar here. This is going to be the derrick for lifting our tender Lily onto the deck of Josefine. And you can see that's just loosely in place. This is the lifting end. The other end I'm working on at the moment will have this fitting. That has to fit on here, and that's what will attach. I've shown you this before. That will attach to the spider band around the base of the main mast. It's reclaimed timber, basically. It was used for a different purpose before, and this was a lot thicker. You can see from the sawdust on the floor that I started yesterday that I've already taken off quite a lot. And normally when you make a spar like this, you start off with a rectangular section, which you can then draw the lines on that you can plane to and follow. So you get a more measured, controllable way of making a nice, perfectly round section yard or spar. I can't do that. There isn't enough timber here to take this back to a rectangular shape, so I'm having to work with a round section and try and keep it round. In fact, it was oval more than round. It's two pieces glued together, as you can see. It's a nice piece of timber. There are no knots in this one, so it's a really nice piece of timber, and it was worth all this work. So I started planing it yesterday. Nice shape. I'm actually very pleased with that. Let's have a look down the end. I don't think that's bad at all. Move it over that way. That doesn't look too bad, does it? Hey, it's pretty good. It's still round, it's nice and smooth, it's taken off any of the edges, look, from the planing marks and everything. And I think the orbital will probably do the job. It'll do it well enough anyway. So let's just have a look and see if, well, there you go, look. That's pretty good, look. That's not a bad fit, is it? It's tight on there. We want it tight, you know, I expect that will drift on. I'll sand a little bit more off it, but you get the idea anyway now what we're up to. I know shipwrights will probably cringe, so I shall continue now and sand all the rest of that up and then bring you back in when I finished it. I think it'll come up nicely, and then we'll get some D1 on it later on, so bring you back in a minute. And here we are again. I have now finished the sanding, the first sanding anyway, with the coarser grit, and that little hand sander's worked absolutely fine, no problems at all. So you can see that's all nice and cleaned up now, and the band is fits nicely. I've shaped that so it fits nicely. I'll knock that on later on and it will be nice and firm. I've lopped the end of the wood off because, well, it had a hole in it, but that's not the reason for it. If you can see there, I don't know how much you can see there, there's a little bit of rot just showing just there. So it was nice to get that cut out. Through. So we're using this Dexol D1 look. Give it a quick stir. I always feel at this stage that the wood is a little bit like I feel on a hot summer's day when the first mouthful of a really lovely ale washes over me. That's what I think of when I see the wood get this first coat of oil. I wonder if it feels the same way. I can almost hear it saying, "Ah." It's a lovely piece of wood, actually. Smells delicious. Looks lovely. And now it's happy. morning, everybody. It's 9th of August, Wednesday 9th of August, and it's about 9 a.m. in the morning. I've already done a couple of hours work, and I've just brought you over to the barge, which is where we do a lot of our painting, varnishing, and some of the fabrication. And I think I've got about 4 jobs to do today. The first of which is to get a coat of varnish on our derrick. This, remember, is the derrick for lifting our dinghy on board. I've already showed you some of the work I've done on that. I showed you all the shaping of it and sanding. And this morning I've just given it, I gave it some D1, which is now dry. It's had 3 days. That's the penetration oil. And I've just been over it with the palm sander this morning just to take the top surface off, because remember, with the D1 penetrator, that works by being in the wood, not sitting on it. And sometimes, I mean, you end up putting an awful lot on. You can end up with a little film of it on the surface, which is a bit, it's not great for varnish finish. It will work, but if you want a really nice varnish finish, it's best to go over it with a sander, which I've just done. So I'm just about to put D2 varnish on that. The other job I've got to do is this. This is our Dinghy Lily's mast, which we found when we got it out the other day, had a little bit of rot in the, right down at the base of it, and I think I've shown you that. So in the last few days, over the weekend, I took some of the fittings off and I planed off the bit that was rotted. So you can see that if I turn it over, you can see what I've done. Look, I've just planed that down, and so that I can scarf this new piece in. Dominic found me a nice piece of wood. It was the end of a bit of deck planking. That's a 3-inch deck plank, and that fits beautifully, and he kindly planed that with using their lovely thickness or planing machine. Anyway, you know, you can run it across, so that saved me a lot of bother. And so now I've just got to position it, glue it on. I'm going to use epoxy, and then I'll have to cut and shape this piece of wood, obviously, to the mast, and it has a little peg at the bottom that sits in the keelson on the dinghy. So those are the first 2 jobs I've got to do. I've got my clamps already over there. I've got the epoxy here, which I'm going to use to do this job, and a little bit of thickening agent there. So that's my first job to do. So what I'm doing, just mixing up the epoxy without any of the thickening agent, and I'm just going to spread this evenly on both surfaces of the scarf, and then I'll mix up another batch, add it to this, whatever's left of this, if anything, and in the second batch I'll add a little bit of the thickener, not too much, and then I clamp the 2 halves together. So there's nothing really rocket science about it. There we go. A little bit of epoxy on there, and we just spread that nicely on the bit we're going to glue, and then we do the same to, let's pour it on. That seems to be the best way. Should be enough. This is expensive stuff, so we try not to be too extravagant with it, and only get it where we want it, where we need it, I should say. We don't need a lot of this. That's probably enough. Just makes it into a less runny paste. See, one of the good things about the thickener is I can do this without it all dripping off. It'll stay in place until I can get it clamped together. To make it sure it's glued to the end. Yep, that's good. That's part one. Now I think it's probably coffee time, so see you in a bit. Good morning, everybody. It's Thursday the 10th of August. Yesterday I showed you the final preparations of our derrick, which I put a coat of varnish on, and there'll be another coat today. And my first job this morning is to deal with this. Yesterday I showed you I scarfed on this piece of wood, which is a piece of old 3-inch deck plank. I have this morning drawn on some safety lines here, which I mustn't plane down below. So all I'm going to do now is plane down to those lines. I've put them on both sides for good measure. That's with a 40 grit, and that's crafted that quite nicely. I'll work that down now. I'll put an 80 on it after lunch, and then finish it with a 180, and then that and I'm back after lunch. I've given the whole thing now a treatment with the 180 grit, so the whole mast has been now sanded, ready for varnishing. I might as well give that a coat of varnish at the same time. But before I do that, I need to cut the end of this off, because we know this is too long, and cut the little square plug at the bottom. Turn it off. Good afternoon, everybody. Well, I've just finished scrubbing the bottom of the dinghy, ready for painting. It's raining today, so I thought, I might as well. I'm going to get wet anyway, so I didn't mind doing it on a wet day. And the next 3 days are good weather, so I can paint. Anyway, so it's all finished now, scrubbed down, and I've just come over to the barge. These are the blocks that the dinghy's going to sit in. I spent all day yesterday to template and make these blocks for it to sit in. So what I'm going to do is just take these top corners off. You can see my felt tip pen lines, which I've just drawn on there. So I'm going to make curvatures, but I'm also going to come back, what is that, 1/4 of an inch? So it'll curve, and the actual slot will be about 1/4 of an inch bigger all the way around, because what I'm going to then do is put leather hide in there, which is 1/4 of an inch thick. So that will go all the way around like that. There's another one there. That's the side I'm doing it. Look, you can see the line I've drawn. This, by the way, I've managed to hack out of what was our original gallows. That's where they've come from. You can see the bite-sized bits which I've cut out. This was the gallows on top of our wheelhouse for our mainsail boom, which we modified, as you know, so we didn't need that anymore, so that was good. Other stuff I've been doing over the last few days, that's had a couple of coats of varnish. That's the rudder for Lily. The rest of it is over here, so I painted that, so that's been painted. That looks nice, doesn't it? So that's all ready. That's had a couple of coats. I've rubbed down and varnished our boat hook, so that's there. Look, that was the devil of a job actually to stop that flipping dripping. Whatever I did, it seemed to still drip. That's the little extension to the tiller arm, which has had a couple of coats of varnish. That's for the, again, that's for the rudder on Lily. This is the mast. I've shown you this before actually, because you remember I
Had to scarf a new piece in. You can just see it there. It's the whole of the bottom, and then it tapers up to there. So that whole tapered piece there, you may just be able to see the line, can you, there, where it's scarfed in. So that came out really nice. Very pleased with that. And that again has had loads of varnish, and I painted the top and bottom because the bottom sits in water. Well, it often sits in water, you know, any dinghy does, you know, you're going to get water in the bottom of it. So it stepped there, look, and so I thought I'd paint it just for extra resilience, and the top of it painted white there as well. There you go, that looks pretty good. Quite happy with that. You'll notice the angle there looks a bit funny. You know, the plane of the base of the mount there and the plane of that bottom edge are not the same, but that's because the coach roof slopes down that way, each way, slopes down that way, so the boat obviously has to be vertical, which is not at 90 degrees to a sloping coach roof. So that's the reason for that. So I'll continue on and do the rest of them, and I'll catch you later. Well, there you go. There are the finished items. Look, there's my 4 blocks, nicely smoothed off, taken off the edges. I haven't bothered too much smoothing down this surface here because that's going to have the leather on. I've just taken the varnish off there, marked them all so I know which way and where they go back. Tomorrow I'll cut the leather. This is what I'm going to do the anti-foul with. Ultra 300, International Ultra 300. It's what they call a hard anti-foul. So that's an anti-foul for boats that sort of are sometimes in the water and sometimes not. And it's sort of trailer boats, really. Et voilà. Good morning, everybody. It's Tuesday, 5th of September. It's an absolutely glorious morning here. We're in for a really good week here in the UK. I think 30 degrees all week. Dinghy's finished. I've filmed that, so you should by now have seen all that. That's all done. I did the final bit last night. She's all ready to go. So this is we're going to we're actually going to lift her on now onto the top of the coach house here, which is where she's going to live. You can see those blocks that I showed you when I was making them, and they're just loosely, the leather's tacked in position because they may have to be altered. So this morning's job is to get the dinghy on, get it lined up, set up to see if those blocks work, and if not, how much, alter them to suit. Where they're going to sit, I've got to mark carefully. I've already marked them once, but that may have moved since I finished the blocks. And once that's settled, the dinghy will come off, and then they can be screwed in through the deck. They've been lined up specifically to meet beams that hold up the roof of the coach house, so they'll be well secure. Now you can see the derrick in action. I've shown the making of that. Now you can see it. Let's start at this bottom end. So the lifting ropes, or whatever they call them, I got a nice big iron ring, and I've spliced those two lines in there. This end, they're both at this end. They've both been loosely fitted because we didn't know what sort of alterations we might need to make to them. I think it's pretty well balanced there. Seems to lift out of the water pretty flat. I need to see how it comes down here, and we can adjust that. So if we don't like the way it's coming down, the level at which it's coming down, we can alter it by altering the relative lengths of those lifting ropes. So there's just a couple of bowline knots in those in the ends. That end, both ends actually will eventually have hooks, and I think I've got those in here. Let's have a look. There you go. That's the sort of thing I'm going to do. I'm going to eye splice that into the end of each of those lines, and so when we need to ship the boat, it's a very quick and easy snap that onto that shackle down there. I drilled a hole through the stem, the stern stem there, and put that eye bolt and a shackle on, so that'll just snap onto that. At the other end, let's put that to one side. At this end, what we decided to do, in consultation with Dominic, this was his idea actually, I've spliced a circle of rope, a loop of rope if you like, so that's endless now, through the eye bolt that was originally on the boat, through the stem at the bow, which normally takes the painter here, which we're going to cut free now. I'm using it just this morning to steady the boat, but it will eventually go. And then we'll just have that endless loop of rope, which will stay on the boat and can be, that will double as a point to connect a mooring painter. And then we'll put a hook on that line, and that will snap round there as well. So that'll be nice, quick and easy. So she's ready to come on. As I say, we've got the steadying ropes and everything there. So then I had to make, sorry about the sunshine, I don't know, I'll try and keep you out of that, but there's this tackle here below the derrick, which I had to add, because what happens is, and we knew this was probably going to happen, but you can imagine as we lift this derrick, which, by the way, if I just try and shield the sun from you, is being lifted by the throat halyard. That's the block above. At the end of the derrick, it's the block above that travels up to the top of the head of the mast up there. And that's normally used. It's normally connected to that eye bolt there, which raises the gaff, which raises our mainsail. So it's doubling, which we like that, which, try not to have too much additional equipment. So that will lift the derrick. Now, as it lifts the derrick, it'll lift the boat as it comes inboard, but of course once it clears the cabin rail, it'll continue to rise up, so then we have to bring it down. And obviously if we lower the derrick, it will just go back on out again, it will move out. The positioning is great, it's just obviously high, and so really all that tackle there is doing is that when it's in position, and you'll see this in a minute, we'll try and film it all, when it's in position we will then release that, or I say release it, let that out and lower the dinghy onto these blocks. That's the theory. Obviously there's going to be all sorts of teething problems with that. We're going to have to lift this derrick to lift the boat up, and that's why we've got it through a snatch block here down to the windlass and onto the drum, onto the winch. So that's going to do all the lifting. We don't have to do any grunting or heavy lifting. And once that's up, we can just open the snatch block, take this rope out and belay it on one of the pins. We then transfer to this purchase, and we don't need the winch for this. We just release it from the pin here and just let it gently out, which you'll see it's easy enough to control, and down it will go onto the blocks. So that's it. That's the theory. We'll see how it works. I've got a little remote control for the windlass, so I can operate it from any position, but I'm hoping that this will work by me standing here in charge of the throat halyard, Randy standing somewhere back here to stop the boat swinging around and hitting the coach house. We can point it, we can swing it around, it doesn't have to come in sideways, so I think what we do is raise it, swing it round so it's pointing inwards, and then bring it in that way, which should keep it away from the wheelhouse. We've got a little bit of wind this morning, so that will be a nice little challenge for us. So that's it. We're just having a cup of coffee before we begin. We've got everything up and ready, and I'll see you in a minute. Keep the stern pulled in as well, so you need 3 lines really. You're going to have to try and juggle all 3 lines. That's it, that's it. Right, you can physically hold the boat now because that will make it easier for you. Your left hand on the boat, you can guide it by pulling the boat physically. So what I'm going to do is try and let it down here. Okay? Needs to come towards me, doesn't it? So pull it towards me a bit. That's it. Good. That's it. That's lovely. Lovely gently. Right. Just hold it there a second. Yeah, no, that's good. Pleased with that. Oh, there you are down there. What did you think of that? There was a little bit of questioning as we were going, but otherwise I think that went really well, and even Randy kept her cool, which is unusual. In designing a system to lift Lily onto the decks of Josefine, one of our major concerns, of course, has been not to damage Lily. And in particular, the design of a sling lifting system like this, where if you get these angles wrong, where the slings, where the boat hangs from the slings, you can impart some surprisingly large loads, unintentionally, of course. And in particular, it's all down to the angle that the 2 slings make at the top. In this case, it's 65 degrees, and I'll step outside the boat in a minute to show you that. But at 65 degrees, it means that this is a resultant force, which is divided between a vertical and a horizontal force. What it effectively means is that the actual load in the sling isn't simply the weight of the dinghy, the 250 kilos. It's actually multiplied by a factor of 1.2. That's with a 65 degree. So in this case, the slings are basically lifting 300 kilos instead of 250. So, and it's exponential. So that's at 65 degrees. At 90 degrees, it goes up to 1.4. And at 120 degrees, it goes to a factor of 2. So if that angle, if you look there, the angle of the slings there, if the angle is, if those ropes were shorter, the slings were shorter, the angle would increase. And if it was at 120 degrees, it would increase twofold. So the slings would be lifting 500 kilos instead of 250 kilos. And just for a bit of fun, I looked it up. At 170 degrees, it's a factor of 12. So instead of the slings having to bear the weight, or the forces on it, I should say, the forces on the component parts, the ring, the sling, and the shackles at either end, instead of being 250 kilos, it would be 3 tons. So you can see you could do quite a lot of damage, which, I mean, 3 tons would exceed the design strength of the shackles that we have on it anyway, but it isn't obviously 170 degrees. So the other factor is the compression loads. With a sling like this, you can imagine that's pulling from this end, and the other sling from the other end. Of course, that's pushing in towards the centre of the dinghy. It's effectively trying to crush the dinghy. And again, the length of the slings is a big factor. So originally, the distance from here, the centre of the load, if you like, up to the point at which the slings hang from, I had that, I think it was about 60 inches, I think, originally. And I worked out that the load that imparted, the compressive loads, was trying to crush the boat, if you like. The load trying to crush the boat was 300 kilos. And by raising that point, the attachment point, by just 40 inches, I reduced that to 170 kilos. So yeah, some of the things you have to take into consideration if you're going to set up a system like this is just be aware of the loads. And it isn't just obviously the loads that I've just described, in other words, in the shackles here and in the sling, and obviously on the boat and the compressive load, but of course it's compression load in the spar itself. So you've got other loads going on in other places. Basically, if you can get that, the higher you can get that and the smaller you can get that angle, the better. So that was obviously partly the object of this exercise, was to learn. Every time we do it, we'll learn something different. So you can see we can get through here. Obviously, as Randy says, we won't have all these ropes. They're only temporarily here while we work out. A lot of these are redundant, these lines. I mean, that's the old sheets, main sheets, which I've replaced. When I replaced the rope for the throat halyard, because we had some really horrible rope on there, really stiff, and it's running so much more smoothly now. Before it wouldn't even drop, you know, you had to pull the mainsail down. And I know that's not unusual, but we had to pull bloody hard, so now it works perfectly. So I've got some nice rope on there. It's hemp, not natural hemp, it's poly hemp, I think they call it. So we replaced this one here, look, that's what it looks like. That's not the one actually. This is the one we use, 18mm poly hemp. It's nice and soft, runs nicely. So that's on our main sheets, and also now doing the throat halyard. So anyway, we've got a lot of rope round here that's surplus to immediate requirement, but of course we keep for future use. I mean, that'll actually make quite a good mooring line. We're a bit short of mooring lines anyway. So anyway, without that hanging there, obviously you can see there's good passage through here. You know, you can walk through quite easily. And the other thing is that we've got really good access still to our spider band and all our various halyards that are going to be on here. That's good. This will lift off. That's the next exercise actually. We've never tried that, so it'll be interesting to see how we get on. We won't have to hold the whole weight of the derrick from here because it'll be hanging on the throat halyard. Obviously it'll swing in, but we just have to lift that up and off there. We'll just pull it up on the throat halyard, I suppose. But that'll be the next exercise to see how easily that goes. So anyway, we've got good access there. We've got good access down here, especially once we get rid of all those surplus ropes. And we've got good access here. Deliberately come back as far as we possibly can. You probably heard me saying that when we were setting it up, so that we do have good access to our spider band. And the access here is good. I mean, I can sit here, look, quite happily. The dinghy is actually quite useful for sort of resting on while you're helming. So all good things really. Really pleased with that. So it's coffee time in a minute. Dominic will be round and we'll give him an opportunity to have a look at it, because he normally always comes up with some blindingly good ideas to perfect this. But you can see those blocks. They've actually gone where I marked them originally, which is nice. So I know I can then, once the dinghy's off, I can glue those leather in place and screw them all down. These are the finished mounts for the dinghy. The leather's on now, obviously, as you can see. All in and done, all lined up. And that's the first of 2 cradles. That was the template, which I showed you in the last episode, actually templating. Same principle to create that. It's been leathered as well. I've recessed that actually into the wood. And today I've been doing the second cradle. So there you go. Job done, and the winch is brilliant. That works superbly. This is the little zappy thing, the little remote control. Somebody pointed out to me the other day, quite rightly, make sure I carry a spare battery for it. And I'm also going to have a fail-safe. We're going to have a secondary control system, because if that went overboard, which it could quite easily, or you lost it, you're basically buggered, because there's no exterior controls on the actual windlass itself. So what we're going to do is put some foot pedals in, which will do 2 things. It will be a secondary control system, so that we don't, completely lose control of the windlass, and also it will be useful because we'll be able to operate hands off. And I'm back. I hope you enjoyed that video. I said at the beginning that I would say a few words about our sailing plan, so here they are. The long and short of it is that we're not going sailing. At the beginning of the year, we thought we'd get away sort of March, April, end of March, April, May, sometime like that. But of course, there are a whole load of jobs that you never thought of, and the jobs that you did think of tend to take about 3 times longer than you thought they would take. So it's not unusual, that the timing is something difficult to get right. So what's actually happened over the course of the year is that we've just been pushing the date further and further forward. First we thought it was going to end of March, April. Then we thought, well, that's not going to happen. So then it was June, and then July, and then August. And without really realising it, I started to feel a lot of stress, because I was trying to do 2 incompatible things. I was trying to get the boat finished, and I was also trying to make plans to go sailing for an ever shortening sailing season. And even if we did get going now, I mean, what would we have, 3 or 4 weeks to do sea trials, and then we'd have to turn around and come back here and finish off all the other jobs that we haven't done yet. So 2 weeks ago, Randy and I sat down and discussed it and realised that what we were trying to do was really silly. It was impossible, really. Didn't really make any sense. And so we decided to abandon any attempt to get away this year, and we will set sail in the spring with a completed boat. There won't be any jobs left to do, hopefully. I mean, there'll be the normal maintenance, but the boat will be complete. And the moment we made that decision, it was a big relief, to be honest with you. And all of a sudden, the work I was doing suddenly became really enjoyable again. So it was the right thing to do. We just basically run out of time. There's nothing we can do about it. We were always going to be here for the winter anyway, so it's not like we missed that much. And this is a much more practical. So we'll be here for the next 6 months and get away in March. So that's that, really. One other thing I wanted to say is Randy does appear a little bit more in this video, which is unusual. I'm sorry she doesn't appear in more of the videos. She's a bit camera shy, but once we get sailing, you'll see more of her. The reason for that is because the work that Randy does, unlike the sort of varied work that I do, it tends to be a little bit boring and routine. She's doing a lot of cleaning and scrubbing and sanding down, painting, varnishing, and that sort of thing. And there's only so many times, you want to see a video of that. So she doesn't appear really that much, which is a great shame. And because of that, I'm going to give her the last word. So catch you in the next episode, and hope you have a good week. Bye.
Ow! on. Go away.